My name is Anne Marie Sayers. I live in Indian Canyon in Hollister, California, and it is the only federally recognized Indian country for 350 miles along coastal California. This is a lonely territory which extends from San Francisco to Big Sur, from the Pacific Ocean to the Mount Diablo Range. It was not until 1980 that I realized the American Indian did not get the right to practice their religion freely until 1978 with the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. I was horribly upset. And so I opened up my great-grandfather's trust allotment to all Indigenous people whom are in need of traditional lands for ceremony. California, indeed, is a golden state. Reality dictates that the foundation of California, foundation of this entire country, is built on lives and deaths of Indians. I will tell you, my ancestors lived here for 16,000 years. And it's at a point now that our mother is having difficulty. Non-Native people can learn a lot from the Native peoples that are still alive, that are still living on their lands, that are working with the environment in a manner that is respectful. I would really enjoy the current administration to live on a reservation, and perhaps they would understand what they are creating and what they have created. And understand the beauty of natural life. Let's protect it. I love being alive today and seeing all the Native peoples really embrace their culture.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Friday. My name is Mark Medeiros, and I am the Community Engagement Manager for Peninsula Open Space Trust. And this is a part of a new series that we're doing of community events online. My normal work is to host events with all of you in person. So we're really excited to be bringing you more of this type of stuff online for all of you to enjoy. So today, I'm sorry, I'm looking at another screen here. I'm bringing up a slide for you to look at. Today we're going to be having a special guest. Before I do that, I do want to share a little bit about POST for those of you who are less familiar. So Peninsula Open Space Trust has been around since 1977. And in that time, we've protected almost 80,000 acres of open space in the area. So our primary focus areas include expanding public access for all of us to enjoy the many parks that we have in the area, but also protecting our local wildlife, our redwood forests, and our farmland. And of course, this work could not be possible without the support of our generous donors. So thank you to all of you. You're truly the reason that this work is possible. So today we will be hearing from a very special person, and her name is Kanyon, Coyote Woman, Sayers-Roods. And she is the daughter of Anne Marie Sayers, who was featured in the film In the Land of My Ancestors, which we recently screened as part of our Wild and Scenic Film Festival. So we definitely want to hear from all of you who are watching the film festival, see what you think, see if you're enjoying the films. And we got a lot of comments about this incredible film that I love personally, about Anne Marie Sayers and also Kanyon. So Kanyon is a local activist, artist, and consultant and Indigenous woman. She was raised in Indian Canyon, which is located a bit south of Post's operating area near Hollister in San Benito County. And as you heard from that trailer and from the film, Indian Canyon is the only federally recognized Indigenous land in the San Francisco Bay Area. Kanyon is involved in a great many projects and causes here in the Bay Area. And her art is displayed in the DeYoung Museum, the Som Arts Gallery, Snag Magazine, and numerous other locations. So with that, I want to welcome Kanyon. How are you doing today, Kanyon?
Mishmintuhis, good day. Kanarkat Kanyon, Coyote Woman. Today I am a very nomadic native. I'm not in Indian Canyon. So I'm needed in a few places around the Bay because I am a native monitor following the legacy of my mother around protecting sacred sites. So some of these days I'm actually an essential worker working with archaeologists and construction workers. So culturally sensitive sites need Indigenous eyes to ensure our cultural resources are protected. I am so happy to be here. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. We are so honored to host you, and I'm so grateful that you've made the time to be with us. Like I said, we've had over 1,000 people watch the online Wild and Scenic Film Festival, and this film that you and your mom are featured in is definitely like the showstopper for everybody. Everybody is just so impacted by it. So I wanted to bring up this slide again of you. It's a really cool picture. Could you tell us a little bit about this picture?
Yes. So in 2019, I was part of a committee who was organizing a canoe journey in the Bay Area. And we went, this is in the East Bay, this is near Huchin. Huchin is what we call today as Oakland and Berkeley territory, collecting tule. And we were collecting tule for a watercraft. So we were gathering tule and harvesting, working with the community. And I was part of a community to honor the 50th anniversary of the occupation of Alcatraz. And that was part of Canoe Journey. And there's more information on my website about that. But it was really fun working with California Native relatives and allies around harvesting tule and honoring the water. Like, water is life, and these are our cultural resources, and this is how we live with the land. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it's such a cool picture. And yeah, I know you do so much of that type of stuff. Like, the list of these types of projects that you've been involved in over the years is just so long. But I thought that was a great example that give people an idea of one of the things that you've been involved in. So I know now you are a, so actually I wanted to touch on Indian Canyon a little bit. So for those of you who, for those of our audience who weren't able to see the film yet, could you just say a few words about Indian Canyon so folks know what's up there?
So as it was noted a moment ago, Indian Canyon is the only federally recognized Indian country between Santa Barbara and Rohnert Park. Up in Rohnert Park, federally recognized land, federally recognized people. Down in Santa Barbara, San Ynez Rancheria, federally recognized land, federally recognized people. However, in this Bay Area region, the indigenous peoples who today are considered as the word Ohlone, are landless natives besides Indian Canyon. And so my mother opened up this land for all indigenous people in need of land for ceremony. And so I recognize that I'm a very privileged California native indigenous person who is able to say that I was born and raised on my ancestral homeland. I'm seeing that I'm frozen. I hope the audio is going through. No.
I can hear you good. I can hear you well.
Yay.
I can hear you well.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Yay.
good.
I'm like sitting here like, oh dear. Okay, I recognize that I'm a privileged California native who is born and raised on my traditional homelands where my grandmothers have always been, and that I was raised in a both traditional and intertribal environment where culture sharing and recognizing indigenous protocol is a, well, we'll call it a normalcy, a way of life, a way of being. So I live in a mile-long canyon that has ceremony happening often. So I recognize that privilege, and with that, I honor my mother's legacy in continuing that. So this image right here happens to be at our storytelling gathering, where we open up the land for the public to visit the land and gather and witness indigenous storytelling. And we're not a park. We don't receive state or any federal funding. We have a nonprofit organization, and it's out of the kindness of the community that helps us continue doing this work. So yeah, it's really awesome.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And so now next I wanted to share this slide for everybody. So I know that your work now involves being a consultant and educator around tribal and indigenous issues and resources in the Bay Area. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, sometimes some people are curious about cultural resources. So as I said earlier, I'm working with, I'm monitoring archaeologically sensitive sites, working with archaeologists and construction workers, because here in California, we have CEQA, California Environmental Qualities Act, and the acknowledgement of NAGPRA, Native American Graves and Repatriation Act, recognizes that, well, indigenous people have a long-held history since time immemorial here on these lands, and acknowledging this history and this stewardship is so very important. So cultural resources technically are everything from language revitalization to the ecological system, like environmentalism and ecological systems, culture sharing, storytelling, oral narratives, anything that has to do with community, sovereign governance. All of this is interwoven and connected. And so cultural resources that I'm currently looking for when it comes to culturally sensitive sites would be ancestral remains, which I pray we don't encounter, and any cultural resources like arrowheads, everything. Sadly, it's hard to find some of the biological and botanical resources because, biodegradable. Mm-hmm. But when I talk about cultural resources, it's, well, think about it, resource of culture. My mind's a little warm today. Sorry.
Yeah. Is it hot out there in Davenport today? It's like nice.
Yeah, well, there's more just concentrated sun, and then I'm in an area where there's not a lot of air movement, so I tend to, if I'm not in moving air a lot, I'm like, it's stagnant. Yeah. So sun and still air is like, and I need a breeze. I might get one.
Again, I mean, thank you so much for being with us. So to that topic of cultural resources and education and all that, I wanted to show this slide that you shared with me, and it is so powerful to me to see this this map, both California and then the Bay Area, and the many diverse indigenous communities that have been here for thousands of years, continue to exist here, and be leaders in stewarding our land here. And so I think for many people watching, having a deep understanding of this map and all the people and communities that are involved, maybe there's not a deep understanding there. I know that as an environmentalist myself, who is a non-native person, I have a lot to learn about the legacy of stewardship of California land that goes back thousands of years, and the communities that exist here now that are still doing that. So to illustrate that point, I think some people who are watching may not be aware of what the term Ohlone is and where it comes from, and how it doesn't really correlate to the great diversity of people that live here. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Of course. So the term Ohlone does have an origin story that has an Indigenous thread of truth. So some of us may have heard the term Ohlone and Costanoan. Well, Costanoan is a misnomer. Ohlone is also a misnomer. However, I myself identify as a proud Ohlone person. And this is why it's important that we know truth and history about this. So Costanoan, Spaniards came through, called us Costaños. They didn't ask us how we identify. They just proclaimed that, oh, those are the coastal Indians. The word Ohlone, there is a singular village site by San Gregorio that is known as Oholon. And then, lo and behold, when California is getting colonized and settled by non-Indigenous peoples, academia validates the written word, and non-Indigenous people start writing about it in newspaper articles and citable sources. And so because those are citable, those get valued and validated as identifying the original peoples. So over time, there's a long list of the word that went from Oljones to Olchones to Oholon to Ohlone. And then we discovered the book, The Ohlone Way, that was written in 1978. Did you know that the Native American did not have the right to practice religion freely until 1978? That's 10 years older than me. 10 years older than me in 2020, the Native people did not have the right to practice religion freely. Let that sink in. And so with that being said, yeah.
I mean, it's so terrible. Yeah.
Right? And there are 8 language dialects within Ohlone territory. And these 8 languages are different and diverse. Did you know that California has in excess of 250 language dialects, all of which mean those are diverse ways that these communities hold themselves. They have creation stories, they have coming of age ceremonies, they have different ways of life and different ways of practicing being in community, in their own society, their own form of governance, meaning that diversity is beautiful and should be celebrated. We didn't walk around saying, speak my language. I venture to say that a good portion of my ancestors were multilingual, at least the ones who elected to travel and to trade with diverse community members. Being multilingual and recognizing that we share this space, but some of our territories are very unique, and when we venture out or we travel through, it's a good way to be humble and respect whose land you're on. Indigenous peoples have been stewarding these lands since time immemorial. And when we recognize that we all have a responsibility to be good stewards, we can think about how we could be accountable to be good ancestors in training.
Wow.
So I'm glad you have this method.
Thank you. Yeah. And when I hear that kind of powerful, testimony and education, it impacts me so much, thinking about the area that we are in the Bay Area. Again, like you said, that incredible diversity of languages and people that exist in such a small area. It reminds me of how blessed I am to be here now, and how fortunate I am to exist in this area, how as people who care about this place now, understanding that history will, and that living legacy of people and the work that's being done by Indigenous communities now, that's really a hugely important step to figuring out how to live sustainably and create this future that we want to see here. So I appreciate that little piece of education that you shared with us right now. So yeah, thank you. Okay, so about this film, and by the way, we're going to have the opportunity for anybody in the audience to ask a few questions. So now's a good time. If you have a burning question for Kanyon, post it up in the place that you're watching, and we'll see if we could get to it. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about the film. So this is a picture of your mom, Anne Marie, and I know everybody just loves so much hearing from her. Could you tell us a little bit about what the impact of the film was for you, and anything else you want to share about it?
I found it really beautiful because, one, Rucha Chitnis is not a known filmmaker. This was her very first film. And she's this beautiful East Indian woman who is a photojournalist who did this beautiful photojournal essay about my mother, and was so inspired by the work that she's done that she took it onto herself, saying it's important that this be made into a film, into a mini documentary at least. And her timing was very unique. Along the lines of her filming and connecting with me, and then when we started doing the screenings, I myself established Kanyon Consulting LLC, a consultation little business that is dedicated to bridging the gap between Indigenous and contemporary value systems. She also told me she was going to do a small segment about me, and I'm glad. I felt an urge to say, let's do it now. And then part of me is like, I'll slow down. And then she slowed down. I'm sitting here like, it's really good she did, because I think when we come back around to the timing to create one to talk about the future of the canyon and the continued legacy, there will be a lot more that has formed. And so I'm glad we didn't push it. And the beautiful part about this is we've screened it in numerous venues, and it helps the community gain a sense of empathy around these hard-hitting facts. And I understand that these are things that we feel we've been lied to in our education system. And there are times that some Indigenous community members are hurt by these layers of historical trauma and this intergenerational trauma, and then it turns into lateral violence. However, I'm a type of person who just wants all of the information up front, and then we could process through it together. And this means having some difficult conversations. And it's beautiful that Rucha was able to present my mother and my home, Indian Kanyon, and some glimpses of me in there, where we're sharing the work that we do. When we have field trips of students come up and we talk about how we can recognize how our actions have an impact, and that we have to think about how our decisions will impact 7 generations in the future, or how we thank and appreciate the plants. We sing to them, we make offerings to them, we consider what ethical, sustainable harvesting methods are like, and these are with Indigenous pedagogies, and how these overlapping opportunities where acknowledging Indigenous protocol and Indigenous pedagogies can help us strategize sustainable futures. And so this is the work that I love doing. I'm so happy that this film is a reality to share people a glimpse of my mother's life and part of my life.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a start for understanding for a lot of people. When they see that, they're like, whoa, had no context. And I have a journey of learning now because I've heard this. So thank you. There's a comment from one of the audience members here. Thank you, Kanyon. You and your mother are so inspiring. we have your pocket guide at Hidden Villa in Los Altos. As educators, we feel this need to want to share all stories, but don't know where to start to build relationships in a way that we can learn what to share that is truth. So that I think that's a recurring theme, you know, like many people who are passionate about conservation and stewardship, they feel the need to integrate some of this knowledge, but there's this anxiety and worry about the proper protocol of how to go about that and what's appropriate. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Right. Well, I call it Western settler colonial entitlement, because when I was a kid, I used to be offensive and say white people. However, did you know that even Europeans were colonized? And it's the colonial mindset that has impacted us all. And we could take steps towards decolonization and re-indigenization, because white isn't a thing. We could be proud of all of our ancestors. I have Irish and Scottish and European ancestry, and I will identify those. So I'm not going to say I'm part white. I say I have Euro-Mud ancestry that I'm learning about, and we can identify that. And so with that, there comes those awkward times where it's like, how can we honor the Native peoples without tokenizing them, without disrespecting them, or putting a demand, putting extra labor on the Native? Come on, Native person, tell us some stories or do some arts and crafts. It is very offensive when Native culture is depicted in arts and crafts for kids. Do you know about sacred geometry and basketry? It's frustrating that people just say, oh yeah, the kids can have something tangible. It's like, Western settler colonial mentality is absent-minded of the sacred. And so with that, that sense of entitlement, that demand, you little Native, do your song and dance routine for me. And coming into relationship means having those difficult conversations. You can't just walk up to a stranger and say, be my friend. We have to be like, oh, I would like to get to know you more, or I'm curious of what things I might be able to do to understand some of the things that you're familiar with, meaning some people have some homework, some books to read. That's kind of the reason why I started Kanyon Consulting. Is I have a long list of book recommendations. I still need to update my site, but it's more up to date than the Indian Canyon site, because IndianCanyonLife.org is the one for Indian Canyon, and I designed that. I went to school, got my BS. I'm up to my ears in loans for my BS in web design, not because I want to be a web designer, but because I knew the Canyon needed it, and it's already out of date. So you feel free to share that Indian Canyon Life, but a good way to connect with me is Kanyon Consulting, canyonconsulting.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm slightly behind. However, I think this film will be there on my YouTube. And so with this, it's raising awareness and building a network. And so on my website, I have book recommendations. And if you want to learn about Ohlone, there's an Ohlone curriculum that is made by East Bay Regional Parks. You have a quick link on my website, and it's a free curriculum. It's catered towards the fourth graders, but it's also a teacher resource guide. So any teachers, educators, the Ohlone curriculum is a wonderful resource for our community. And my website is meant to be a resource for the community, just educational outreach. So yeah.
That's wonderful. You know, it is for sure a difficult conversation. I think like what I took from what you shared about that question is, you know, it is a little bit complicated. We have to approach, you know, as non-native people in this area who are curious with humility and respect, and as well as curiosity and a desire to you know honor the culture and the people who are sharing. Is that accurate? Does that sound good? Or anything to clarify about that? Okay.
Truth and history. Yeah, because, well, just with that little element, like right now, people are like, get over it. It's done with. It's no longer that bad. And it's like, do you know about the broken treaties? All the way back then, when those treaties were broken, everything that's happened since then is incorrect. and then the ongoing legacy of silencing Indigenous voices. Americentrism is so focused on its entitlement and resource extractive behaviors. It's of a materialistic, capitalistic, disposable society that is absent-minded of the sacred. And so the foundation of America is built on lives and deaths of Indigenous peoples, and the foundation is on Black and brown bodies. Until we actually acknowledge that and shift all of the decisions and the foundations of how decisions are made, we're not going to make any change. So I'm motivated in that sense, but I understand that if I approach things a little aggressively, it might put some people on the defensive. So I utilize my coyote nature and my charisma and make animal noises for 3rd and 4th graders and talk to people about how we can make good decisions and sing to the plants and just be considerate to be like, wow, there have been different ways that Indigenous peoples engage in their environment and their livelihood and societal trends and behaviors that was not as obstructive and destructive as today's current occurrences. And so I'm really motivated to encourage people to decolonize and re-indigenize and just say, like, let's break away from these destructive patterns.
Yeah. The takeaway for me, as I'm learning from you, listening to you, is there are things in, I guess you could say, like, mainstream, white centered environmentalism that's like outside of like the Native and Indigenous mindsets that we don't even understand when we live and breathe it, what we're missing and what we're not integrating into our own mindset, or about how we approach our work and our individual actions. So it's a hard conversation to have, but it's a necessary one. And it's like with a lot of care and love, I think, and I see that coming across. Yeah, totally. So I really appreciate you sharing so openly and candidly with us. And I'm gonna bring up this slide again. So you shared, going to Kanyon. Oh, I misspelled it actually.
Oh, you mistyped it. It's Kanyon Consulting with a K.
Oh no.
I know that's the one thing that's so KK LLC, because in our language, in the Mutsun dialect, our C's are ch, and our C's are ch, and our K's are k. So Kanyon Consulting, because my mother told me that if I was born a girl, it's a K, and if I was born a young male, I'm a C. And I'm Indian Canyon Two Spirit Society founder as well. I have a zillion titles that I forget what I do.
Great. Well, so this is a great place to go and learn more about Indian Canyon and also your work. So again, Kanyon, thank you so much for making the time and having this like radically candid, awesome conversation with us. On behalf of Post, we appreciate you so much and your work. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day out there in Davenport.
Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and wish you luck on this new digital interfacing, social distancing. I'm excited about it because more people will have access, and I hope to have this recording on my YouTube and Facebook.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kanyon. All right. See you later. So everybody who joined us, thank you. Thank you for bearing with the minor, technical difficulties. This is, again, new for Post, and we're very excited to bring you more of this type of content in the future. Actually, to this topic of learning about Indigenous history and current work. Canyons and many Indigenous folks in the area. Mark Hilkema, he's a California State Parks archaeologist, and he'll be doing a 3-part series that you could learn from. We have a variety of other interviews coming up as well. We hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to having you at the next event. So thank you.